Hey guys, welcome back to my watercolor channel, and today I paint a chocolate orange pie. In fact, today is also my birthday, so I'm always looking forward that my husband makes me an orange cake, and it has a really nice thick chocolate layer on the top. He doesn't really like to cook or bake or to prepare any food, but I appreciate it every year that he takes so much effort to make this cake or this pie, because he makes the orange marmalade himself. It's a kind of like a process of 2 days where he prepares everything ahead and then assembles the next day. I am not quite sure what the painting really looks like. It's a combination of wet to wet, using this method, and then adding some of the different layers on the top. I have finished here the background, which is basically a cool cobalt blue, and then I added some of the brighter greens as well. In my painting I have the pie, so now I add the crust there. I really like how it's mixing everything nicely together, and then the chocolate ganache is at the top, so I use a little bit of a burnt sienna there, and then taking a little bit off and adding more of the paint. In my painting I have also some orange flowers and some orange slices, so I will add later on a really nice orange colors into the painting. I didn't want that the foreground takes too much attention, especially where the pie and the other components are sitting, so I added here a nice grey-brown color as well as of some of the indigo blue. I have there also a nice cloth and then some seeds. But here I add already some of the orange that I have mixed before, so having a really nice cadmium red and mixed with some deep yellow or some really warm yellow. And I kind of spread it around the oranges, so it's not really like a reflection, but it will fit nicely with the colors of the orange, and I like it that the colors remain not only light but also bright, so kind of like that the light source is shining in this direction. And then of course adding some more of the orange into the pie where the filling is, and some dark brown to the crust. I continued to mix my bright orange because I wanted to add it to the filling of the cake. And then using wet to wet when painting the slices of oranges, so having here a bit lighter of orange, but then adding darker reddish colors and darker orange here, but and then some bright green to the slices as well. I continue with the cloth, so it's kind of like a little bit of purple blue color, very light, because the other objects are basically much darker, so I wanted to have something lighter there, as well as the orange flowers gonna remain quite light in color. Now that everything has dried, I added the second layer. So just adding a deeper orange there, and then a deeper and brighter cadmium red. As the chocolate ganache is flowing a little bit down, and I wanted to emphasize the thickness of it, so I add there more of a darker colors. And then adding a little bit of a greenish colors, and then emphasizing as well the top of the cake. So adding a darker brown. I think it's a raw sienna mixed with a little bit of a deep yellow and a little bit of a red. So I kind of create a very warm color. And then I continue to add a little bit of shadows underneath the cloth. So they are basically the same colors that I have used for the foreground, but now a little bit more darker, and it's much more darker gray. But for the oranges I added a hint of green, so that the shadows areas a bit different colors. I continue with the leaves, just adding a nice green made out of ultramarine blue and some lemon yellow. And then you can of course vary the shades, so it's always quite nice to have different colors. I continue to add very nice orange to the oranges, or orange slices. It's very, very bright. I try to work with the shape of those slices and adding a little bit of volume by letting the first layer come through. And then spreading as well the colors. While I have this nice orange, I also continue to add it to the pie. Working here a little bit faster, and then adding some brownish colors as well to the crust. And I try to focus on the shape of the crust as well as on the chocolate ganache, which is a little bit more challenging, as I have learned. And then spreading nicely the color, it's getting a nice structure there. Now I continue with the orange flowers, so just adding a purple made out of cobalt blue as well as of crimson red. There are 3 flowers in total, and I also add some of the cobalt blue, cooler blue, to the mixture just to emphasize the form of the orange flowers. I use bigger brush and continue with the leaves. So I'm a little bit careful that I don't want to add too much strong layer yet. So I'm playing around with the objects, basically where I can emphasize the form, and then adding some green to the orange flowers and around, so that the form of the flowers, the petals, comes out nicely. And I thought it fits to add a nice green underneath the tablecloth. I need more of a darker colors as well as more of orange, so I thought that the background looks a little bit too weak and that the main object such as the pie is getting too lost, so it needs a little bit more emphasizing. And I combine both darker blue colors of cobalt blue and indigo blue, as well as adding some of the orange. It's quite important to use a big mop brush because it helps to spread the colors quite evenly and fast, as this brush is able to absorb a lot of paint and water. I added now a little bit of orange to the seeds, and I think with the orange the purple colors fit quite nicely. So a little bit more color to the crust on the side, especially on the shadowy area. And then still emphasizing the top of the pie. So adding here a little bit more of a different layers and try to figure out how to darken this area and that it looks quite nice. Now I add a nice dark blue, a little bit of a cool shade underneath the flower, which adds the shadow there, as well as it emphasizes the petals of the flower next to the pie. I add the same color underneath the pie, so it gives a bit of a darker contrast to the rest of the pie, as well as to underneath the cloth and the orange seeds. As the one orange slice is giving a nice shadow on the other one, I need to emphasize it too, but I choose a green color and then I spread it carefully. Then I continue to add more of a green color underneath the leaves. So it's a combination out of ultramarine blue as well as of lemon yellow. I try to emphasize the structure of the leaves, as well as adding some more form for the pie. And then I emphasize the orange flowers with a darker blue, so nicely around the petals as well. And then playing around with different shades of green, like you can see underneath the oranges as well as underneath the cloth. Now I add a little bit more of a detail to the flowers. So I use a very light layer of bluish or purplish color, and then adding a light shadow underneath the petals. I continue to do the same with the other flowers, and then I thought that the background has dried up really fast, but the colors have been fading away quite strongly, so the pie is getting a little bit lost. It's really not really popping up from the background, and I add a darker layer of indigo blue and cobalt blue here as well. In fact, it is quite important to have a bluish color or cool bluish color in the background if the object at the front contains many darker colors. So it really helps as well with the composition to make sure that the main motif can be seen quite easily. I continue with the top of the pie because I was not too happy the way it looked. It had a little bit too many hard edges, so I tried now to add more of a darker brown, which I mixed out of deep yellow, cadmium red as well as ultramarine blue to hide the previous mistakes. So it's quite possible to do so, as well as later on when everything has dried I can just take off some of the colors. But now I still focus a little bit on adding the details as this purpley color onto the petals of the orange flowers. Adding some structure to the cloth, especially around the orange slice, because it gets a little bit too lost. So just adding darker colors to emphasize the different shapes of the object, such as the orange flowers or the orange slices, but as well as on the leaves. A little bit more purple, and then a bit more darker around the leaf. And underneath the cloth. So my purpose here is just to create more contrast. Now I'm do more fixing of my pie, and taking some water, spread it around with the soft brush, and then take it off with the kitchen paper or with some toilet paper. So just basically adding some light areas and there, a little bit of a fixing needed. This is the first time I'm actually painting a piece of cake or a piece of pie, and it has its own challenges compared, for example, to landscapes or even animals, where I am more confident at. Still taking some of the green from the leaves, and then adding a little bit of a lighter bluish color or spreading it. And then I thought it still looks there isn't much of a contrast between the crust down to the chocolate ganache. So I add another layer of brown and spread it. Now it looks much more warmer, and it gives more contrast now here as well. More paint to the crust, and then emphasizing a little bit the seeds which are on the cloth and next to it. So basically we're nearly done. It's just adding a few details, or kind of like a little bit more of a paint to that the different shapes come out, such as the petals on the cloth or the top of the orange slices. I have actually used for this painting low quality paper, so it doesn't really contain any cotton. It has been working relatively well if you think that low quality papers are not that recommended. The reason why is kind of like the layers were much easier to add, especially when working with still life. But if I would use a lot of wet technique, for example, when I do it on the landscape, when I paint landscapes, then I prefer to use more high quality paper. But that was it. Thank you for watching, and remember to subscribe. Bye.